Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto.
As we face as families troubles and trials and difficulties, we have to understand that everything that happens to us in life is not going to seem to be that good, at least on our part. But the Bible tells us in Romans chapter 8 and verse 28 these words. He says, "And we know that all things work together for good," watch this group he's speaking of, "to them that love God and to them that are called according to His purpose." But you know, when we find ourselves in the midst of death and disease and divorce, sometimes those are the basic 3 Ds that we deal with every day, we find ourselves struggling, we find ourselves searching to find the good in something. We forget the fact that God ultimately wants good for us spiritually above all things. I can't think of any Bible character, however, in the midst of physical things, teaching us lessons about spiritual things, did a better job than the life of Joseph. The life of Joseph is rather extensive. As a matter of fact, the book of Genesis covers about 13 chapters, chapters 37 through 50, discussing basically his life and his life alone. But in the midst of that, you remember briefly the life of Joseph. Of course, he was born to his father, and his father on his 17th birthday, it seems, gave him a coat of many colors. His brothers, seeing the likelihood of his father had chosen him as being the favorite, they became angered at him. Ultimately, they threw him in the pit and left him for dead. But when they saw some slave traders come by, they saw their brother Joseph there in the pit and decided that they could profit themselves if they moved him from the pit and sold him into slavery. He went from slavery to prison and from prison to the palace and so forth. Now finally, years and decades go by and the brothers meet back up with this man Joseph. He's grown now, he looks different, and likewise so do they, but as he eventually recognized them and they became afraid because they remembered all the dastardly deeds they had done to him. They remembered the things that they had done to harm him, to hurt him, but Joseph had a certain attitude about it. Notice the words of Genesis in Genesis chapter 50, verses 19 to begin. "And Joseph said unto them, Fear not, for I am in the place of God. But as for you, ye thought evil of me and against me, but God meant it unto good." Now you think about that. You take your own physical family, supposing that they cast you out. They cast you out into a pit, cast you on the slaves, into prison and so forth. Could you say that those things were meant for good? You know, that's really what it's all about. It's about facing our trials, our troubles, our difficulties. As I said, those 3 Ds, death, disease, and divorce. Facing those things in light of them, realizing that ultimately, if we can be saved in the sight of God through our obedience, those things have certainly worked together for good. And when we do that, my friends, through the Scriptures, we will have found our fortune in faith. Thank you.